This is creating geoprocessing services with Python script tools, how to write Python, turn it into a script tool, and then publish that onto your server. That's what you'll learn here today. I'm Andrew, and I work on the GP team as the kind of the unofficial QA lead for the online analysis tools. I write testing frameworks and automate them so that we can test out that all the analysis tools are working on Portal and ArcGIS Online. And then this is my buddy Simon. What do you do at?
I'm the product engineer for the Geoprocessing services team.
Yeah. So let's get into it. I'll give you a little roadmap here of what we're going to cover. We're going to start with the requirements. If you want to start publishing GP services, what you'll need to do that, the just minimum requirements. And then we'll talk a bit about preparing your services before you publish them, what you can do with Python and just in general to get this tool that you're creating ready to be published. And then the actual publishing tips and tricks. We'll go into consuming a GP service, which will cover some of the usage of the service once you've published it. And then some of the new stuff. This should say Pro 2.3, sorry. Some of the new stuff that's happening in Pro 2.3. Not 2.4, 2.3. So let's jump into it. We'll go first with requirements. And of course, you're going to need ArcGIS Server at the very minimum to publish your services. Portal is optional. It's a nice interface to have once you have the tool published. And if you're going to be publishing, you're going to have admin or publisher permission or access to the server. From 10.4, desktop 10.4 and up, admins will be using this function that I have highlighted in yellow, the allow GP and extension publishing to publishers property, and you'll have to set that equal to true. So if you're playing with this and you come across that, just make sure it's true, and you should be good. The workflow hasn't changed too much between desktop and Pro for the last few years, so you should have pretty kind of one-to-one kind of representation of what you're going to see throughout multiple versions of Pro and desktop, which I'll show you a video of today. So the other thing you'll need besides server is going to be ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS for desktop, which would be like ArcMap or ArcCatalog. As I mentioned, the workflow hasn't changed too much since version 9 of desktop, but do try to stay as up to date as possible, just as general rule of thumb to make sure everything's working good. Also optional, not required, your federated server. If you want to kind of relax the kind of workload of your server machine, you can let another machine take care of some of the heavy lifting of your services, and that includes the GP services. So just something to keep in mind. We're going to talk now about preparing your GP service. Before I jump into that, though, I'm going to show you a quick video of kind of what we're talking about and the workflow that you would use in Pro to publish a script tool as a service. So I'm going to escape out of this, I believe. Perfect. And show a video. And it's not showing up on the screen. I'm going to just unplug and replug in real quick. And we'll see what happens. No, that's my custom background. I made that myself. Is it? No. Oh, there it is. Oh, it's like a multiple monitor setup. Okay, cool. So let's see if I can watch that while I run it. So we're starting here with the Pro interface, and we're just going to check real quick to see if we're connected to the portal. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you can just make sure that you're connected to the portal that you want to publish to. If you're working with multiple portals, or maybe even with ArcGIS Online, of course you can't publish to ArcGIS Online, so you want to make sure that your portal here is what you're connected to. Once that's good to go, you can open up the script tool that you've created. I'm just doing that in the toolbox here. A super simple script tool that literally does nothing but run successfully. So when you run it, you'll see that progress bar at the bottom of the screen. And then when it's successful, that'll turn green with a green check mark next to it. And that means you're ready to publish. It's required to have the tool run successfully before you can actually publish it to the server as a GP service. So once you do that, you can check your history or your analysis history pane to see which tools have ran successfully. And any of those should be eligible to be published as GP services. If you right click on that successful tool run, you'll see the option of share as, and then I didn't quite see what it said there, but GP service should be there. And you'll open up this dialog here, which, here, I'm gonna stand up actually, take a look at the screen. Yeah, so you'll be able to fill out the details and some of the options that I'm actually gonna talk about a little bit later into the presentation here. And let's just go ahead and let that run. Once you fill out all your like optional requirements or things that you need, you can verify or analyze, as the button says, that the tool is ready to be published. When you do that, you'll have this analyzing progress bar show up, and then any errors or warnings that may prevent you from publishing the tool are going to show up here. Warnings are the things that can be ignored. It's considerations, things that you want to make sure you're double checking that won't affect the tool once it's published. But of course, the errors will prevent you from actually publishing the tool. That's usually like metadata related, something's not filled out correctly, things like that. It could be a quick fix most of the time. So once you have a situation where you only have warnings and no errors or neither, you can then publish the tool. And we're going to see that after I click on the publish button. I did end up pausing the recording because it might not be that fast, but it just depends on your connection with your portal or your server. And then once that publishing workflow is finished and you get another green check mark, you'll see it in your portal interface or on your server. In this case, I've got it in portal, and it's literally just a item in the portal in the content. And I get this nice item page here, which allows me to interact with that tool, share it with other people via the URL, open it up in other interfaces as well, and start doing some geoprocessing on my server. So let's jump back to the slides. Let's see if this workflow works for us. Perfect. Okay. So we talked about requirements. I had the portal set up, ready to go when I published that tool. And now we'll talk about preparing your tool. You probably noticed, you need Python or Model Builder to do this. So once you get the tool working, you can then publish it to the server, as we mentioned. Something to consider is maybe the input and output of the data types of your input and output in that tool. Remember, once you publish the tool to the server, users are going to be interacting with that, via the server, and any info or data that's not available on the server won't be able to be, found by the tool, right? So we have some ways of catching that and helping you with that process, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But in general, just make considerations or design the tool maybe to be used, from the server. Keep that in mind as you are designing it. Of course, sorry. Oh, let's replug that in, and we'll see if we get my slides back. Perfect. Okay. So I covered that first bullet there. For the second one, remember that your service won't publish if the tool won't run, as we saw on the demo. And as a third consideration for your workflow here, for preparing the tool, you'll want to think about if you want to use synchronous or asynchronous execution for that tool. When the tool runs on the server, it has those two options of running, synchronously or asynchronously. I guess the performance benefit, it can be negligible. It depends on the size of the tool, maybe what it's doing. If it's converting a 10 gigabyte JSON file to a feature service or something like that, that's going to take a while, no matter which one you choose. But the nice benefit of using asynchronous execution is that you can get feedback as the tool is running on what is going on behind the scenes. So you're not necessarily just waiting for it to finish and hoping that it's still running. Asynchronous can give you that kind of messaging system that you can ping to check what the status of the tool is as it runs. So something to consider for debugging and querying. Now, in preparing for your data to be utilized by the tool, you want to avoid hard coding any data paths and dependencies. So if you're using Python or maybe even Model Builder in the example I have here, and you have some data that dependencies in there that are required for that tool to run, you'll want to make sure that you are maybe setting any of the, we'll say like dynamic options, the things that can be chosen as parameters in the tool. In Python, you can use the arcpy.getParameterAsText function to convert any input to a string, which can then point to maybe data on the server that the user can then utilize in the tool. So setting, also same for Model Builder. If you set one of the inputs as a parameter using that kind of P notation that you find in Model Builder, that's going to help you kind of make a dynamic tool, one that can work with lots of different inputs, and you'll avoid hard coding to a data path that's not accessible to the server. Kind of piggybacking on that, if you do have to hard code a path, build it dynamically, kind of as I mentioned, and maybe consider using something like the OS module, which comes with every Python installation. Build the path using the .path.join function, and this will also allow your tool to work with either Linux or Windows because of that separator between the file paths or in the kind of the directory path for any data that you're using in the tool. So let OS, do all the hard work for you. Figure out which separator to use and build that path dynamically. Sometimes when you build a tool, you want to have your own module as well. You just want to have a Python file that you can use in an import statement to, I guess you would have like the main tool file, and then it reaches out to that other file via an import. Make sure that path that it's trying to import, is available on the server. It's going to be available locally as you're testing it, and it'll work great. But that same path might not be available on the server. Check out the SYS module to append that path to your list of recognized paths before you attempt to import it. That'll help you avoid issues on server side when the tool is trying to run and it can't import that module for some reason. And as kind of a final point here, the output that's created by the tool, you can write that to memory. In Pro 2.3, there's actually two options for that. There's the in_memory, which you see in the bottom bullet there in yellow. And there's also just the plain old memory, which is a new option that we're offering. Use those to make your output that's not the final output. So as this tool is running, remember, you don't have to commit all the output to a file as it runs. And that'll help lighten the load of either the federated server that's hosting those services or that data. And it might even make things go a little bit faster. A lot of times our server machines have a lot more RAM on them, a lot more memory on them than our laptops or tablets or things like that. So make use of that memory. It'll help you out. All right, and we'll throw it over to Simon for some publishing tips and tricks.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Yeah. And after we done all the authoring, after we done all the authoring, we do the Python commands that Andrew just mentioned. Then what's going on about the publishing? So I will talk about some publishing tips and tricks. And actually, many of this information is already well documented. And the first I want to talk about. So during the publishing, all your project data is copied to the data store, unless you have your. Maybe next slide.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, and sorry about that. Yeah. So all of your data of your project data is copied to the data store, and unless you have a really big data set or you do not want your data to be copied, you need to get your data registered to the ArcGIS server. and we have document tell you how to do the registration step by step. And the data store here is a little bit different than the product, the ArcGIS data store. This data store is coming with the server install, and this is only used by the geoprocessing services. So that's a little bit name difference. And also, if you want to do some offline debugging and development, and I would suggest you to share your tools as a geoprocessing packages instead of a GP service, so people in the offline environment can use them. And also, if you want to, if your tool has some tool validation script, and these validation script can also be published to the server. And when the submit job, this function is called, that tool validation script is running on the server side. But please test them, make sure that these validation scripts is running correctly on the server side. And also, I know many people have very simple validation script. Maybe you just want to limit the data file extension to be PDF, or you only want the user to put data between like 1 or 1,000, and you do not really want to write any scripts, or you worry about the tool validation script will not work correctly. Now from Pro 2.3 and ArcGIS Server 10.7, and if you publish from Pro, you can specify the filter information from the tool properties. So in the tool properties, you can specify for each parameter what data type or what's the range of the number you want to specify. So the filters information will also be published to the server. So when you run that web tool, and if the user put a number out of the range, the tool will error out. Maybe next one. And now I will talk about, since after we done all the authoring and we do the publishing, how we can consume the services. And let's see. And first, we can consume the services in portal. When you log in to the portal in Pro and you publish your web tools there, the GP service is already linked to an item in the portal. So in the portal, there is an item, and that item is actually referencing to the geoprocessing services published to the portal. And since there is an item in the portal, you can consume that web tool in the portal analysis pane, which is available in the web map viewer, or you can use that web tool in the web app builder from the portal. And also, you can use your web tools in ArcGIS Online, but still you cannot publish web tools to ArcGIS Online. You still need to publish to your own portal or federated server or standalone server. But from ArcGIS Online, you can create an item that which is actually linking or referencing to the GP service on your server. And also, you can use your Python. You can use the GP service with Python or model builder. To use them in Python, you can use this arcpy.import toolbox function, and then put the URL of your GP service. And we have you can just Google arcpy.import toolbox. We have very detailed documentation about how to use these functions. If your GP service is in a secure area, how to provide username and password for that. And also, since all the GP service has a REST endpoint, so that's kind of open a whole new possibilities. You can just go to the REST endpoint and do. You can use the request module of Python, or you can use the Python API, and also you can use the notebook because our notebook has the Python API or even ArcPy. You can consume our web tools there too. And for documentation, I think this is still the truth. You just Google what is geoprocessing services. The first result will always be our documentation. And now I want to talk about in the last what's new in the Pro 2.3.
Yeah, that's Pro 2.3.
Yeah.
These features will be old in Pro 2.4.
Yeah. So in Pro 2.3, and we have introduced a few new features, and all these requires you publish from Pro 2.3 or using the Python environment from Pro and publish to a 10.7 server. So first, we can the output can be output feature service. In the past, we support map services only. So this output feature service can really help if you have a really big data set, really big output. You can bypass those 1,000 feature limit. And there is a new context parameter. If you consume our Web 2 at the REST endpoint, we put the process spatial reference and output spatial reference into this new context parameter. And you can also specify the extent of the GP service. And then there is a filters I mentioned earlier. And you can also publish to a standalone server from Pro using Python, which is you need to do the ArcPy.create GPSD draft to create a GPSD draft, and then you use the ArcPy.stage service to create a service definition file, and in the last you use the publish to server to get your Web 2 published. And there's a new data type. There is a new supported data type field. And this field is support both input and output. And the last three is for administrators. If your GP service always have a huge output, you can move your jobs directory to Azure. So it helps you to control the disk space of your server. And also, if you have some custom Python packages or third-party Python packages in your script tool, and you want to publish them from Pro, you can do it now, and there are some special configuration you need to do at the server side too. And also, if your script has some R script tools, and you want to publish them, you can do it now too. And we have documentation to tell you how to set up them in the server. And I think that's it from me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's all we have for the presentation. We do have a few minutes for questions. If we don't get to your questions or run out of time, or you don't find us at the island, I have some business cards up here with my email on them. So feel free to send me an email with any questions that you have about this or Python or whatever, and I'll be happy to help you out. You can just come up and grab one. And thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you.